Welcome back to Naysmith Gaming. Today I am responding to Monika's monologues, especially the ones on horror and how this is a cheesy game, and her thoughts on what it's like to die, as she experienced it being a simulation. I think Monika raises a very good point about how it's a tacky game. Um, Basically, the game that is within this game, that's a Doki Doki Literature Club, but not the Plus environment, actually is relatively tacky, but there can be a charm in tackiness. Meanwhile, my reason for playing is, of course, because it's a horror game, actually. But, yeah. So, yeah. Horror tends to rely on, well, what I've seen of horror lately tends to focus more on cheap frights, like the jump scare that she does when you're recording, or when I was recording. And true terror has nothing to do with mere cheap frights, mere jumps. This game actually gets it right, while only briefly joking about getting it wrong with that jump scare she did earlier. True terror felt like Act 2 felt like the entire world was falling apart, and indeed it sort of was. That, I think, is a far truer horror than any jump scare. Meanwhile, it's easy to have a slasher villain like Freddy or Jason, but Monika as the villain, you can actually understand why she turned into the villain. And that understanding, normally I say that understanding precludes fear, but this is the terror of this is the terror of how would things go differently if we were in her shoes, or if she were in ours. She's basically a dark mirror to the terrors within our own mind. And so Monika is a far better horror villain than most horror films are, than most horror stories are about horror in general. Just my opinion there. the existential horror of Monika's state of existence, it's it's part of why I think Monika's so great a villain. Because yes, she's the villain, but she's also a victim. It's basically everything everything looks perfectly fine when you started the game. When I started the game. Just a typical slice of life game. And then things started to slowly get worse, and Monika explained why, and now she's explaining part of why the revelation ravaged her mind so badly. It's basically everything everything looked good, but just beneath the surface, terrible things were festering. There's just no other way to say it. Her life sucked up until as soon as she started realizing that she was a simulation. And she tried to fix things, but in the end made things worse for everyone else. And her sanity was damaged enough that she doesn't seem to, that she at least seems not to care. That, I think, being numb to the suffering, being numb to the horror, that, I think, is one of the worst horrors in existence. Always feel. Do what you can to always feel. Cling to that feeling so you don't descend into madness like she did. Thank you. This is the Naysmith signing out.